Welcome, everybody. Welcome tonight. Thank you all for taking the time out of your evening to be here with us and to listen to the panel that we have and about this, some of the issues that are facing migrant farm workers in our country and our state, and more importantly, what's going on here in our backyard in Alachua County. Like I said, thank you guys all for coming out. I'm Vicki Mena. I'm with the Gainesville Interfaith Alliance for Immigrant Justice, and we did organize with about 16 local co-sponsors a week of events today to highlight the issues that farm workers face when delivering food to our tables. It's something that's often overlooked, and it is a tragedy. 80% of the food that we eat is hand-picked, and so it's really important that we understand how it gets to our table for us, and most importantly, that we respect those that deliver it. And so on the table on the entrance, there's a couple things. There is a sign-in sheet. The Gainesville Interfaith Alliance for Immigrant Justice does do educational sessions for community groups and churches, and really we'll come out and talk to just about anybody about all kinds of immigrant issues. Everything from farm worker rights to the laws that are being the laws that are in the legislature right now, to the plight of the undocumented and the plight of immigrants in general. So we're always welcoming new people into our groups. We do meet on Sunday nights, and there's more information on our website, which is the GainesvilleIAJ.blogspot.com. Just a couple things that we have over on the literature table is the program for this evening, and it has the speakers for this evening. There's also flyers for the rest of the week of events. We have some really wonderful things going on. Tomorrow we have a celebration for Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and we also have a panel tomorrow night about local farm working conditions and the people that are doing really good work here locally. Over the weekend we have a fundraiser for the Harvest of Hope, and that's a national nonprofit that works to help farm workers in the time of need. And then we have a discussion at the Civic Media Center on Saturday, and that goes into the root cause of migration. So why are people coming over here? Why is this happening? There's also some facts and figures about farm workers over there, and there's also an application period for the Alachua County Citizenship Initiative Program. It's an AmeriCorps program that will hopefully be starting this fall, so there's information to apply there. And without further ado, I wanted to introduce Emmanuel Clearvis to come up and to and introduce our panelists for the evening. So thank you guys for coming out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome on behalf of the Oral History Program at the University of Florida, and also on behalf of the Interfaith Alliance for Immigrant Justice, and also on behalf of Dr. Paul Ortiz, the director of the Oral History Program at the University of Florida, who could not be here because he is out of town helping to facilitate a PhD qualifying exam at Harvard. Dr. Ortiz asked me to introduce the panel, and he also wanted me to talk a little bit about my experience in Haiti. As you guys can tell by my accent, I wasn't born here. I was born in Haiti. And actually, I have a little story for you guys. Like I already told you guys, I was born and raised in Haiti until I was 12 years old. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to hear a lot of great stories about the United States. A lot of people used to say the United States was the land where dreams can come true. And for a lot of people, the United States was heaven on earth for a lot of people. And people would sacrifice anything to come here. When I was about 8 years old, we used to live, my parents and I, we used to live in an apartment, and we had a landlord. He was a wealthy farmer. he raised cattle and farm, and he paid for all his kids to go to school in the cities. And he had an older son that had that also had two sisters that lived next to us. And I used to see him every day after I come home from school. One day I stopped seeing him, and when I asked my parents and my neighbors for him, and they told me that his parents sold off some of their lands so they can raise the money for their sons to come here to the United States. And they told me that the son never made it to the United States. He died on the boat that was supposed to transport him over here, and everybody else that was on the boat also died with him. And so I've been here in the States for quite many years, and during my stay here, I have met teachers, professors, doctors, and also farmers. People who used to be farmers in Haiti, and they come here, and they all came here with the idea that once they're here, they will be able to achieve their dream. They will be able to live their American life. But once they come here, they know that the American dreams, like you have to work for it. And so they know that you have to work for it. And it wasn't like until recently that I learned of the conditions of farm workers here in the United States. And more specifically in Alachua County, where Haitians are coming here, and they expect to have access to they expect to have access to their American dream. They want to come here because they hear stories of freedom, opportunities where their kids are able to come here and go to school. And a lot of people that are coming here, they're not coming here because they're not able to live a comfortable life in Haiti. They come here because they want a better life for their kids, not that they're not able to eat every day. But like I said, they come here because they want their kids to have a better life, and also for themselves. And so by what's going on in Gainesville with the Haitian farm workers that work with the 3 persons that were caught trafficking the Haitian farm workers, it's not only the dreams of those farm workers that were shattered, it's also the dreams of their kids in Haiti, their wives, their parents, their sisters, their cousins. So it's not only the dreams of just those people. The fact that some of them were able to come here means that they probably have the means, they had the means to live, they had the means to probably eat 3 times a day maybe. And so it's very unfortunate that this is going on over here in the United States, the land of the free. And it's not only Haitians that are sacrificing everything to come here. It's a lot of people. A lot of people are dreaming. A lot of people are dreaming in their dreams to live their American dream. And the fact that in the United States that people do not have access to the fact that in the United States there's a lot of people who are suffering that modern day slavery exists in the United States is it's sad. It's very sad that's happening in the United States, that people do not have access to everything that they dream of. To talk about it more, I will welcome Dr. Anita Spring, who will introduce the rest of the panel, and the speakers who will talk more about the connections between the exploitation that face migrant farm workers in Florida, and especially here in Alachua County. Dr. Anita Spring has a BA from the University of California, Berkeley in chemistry, a master's from San Francisco State University in anthropology, and a PhD from Cornell University in anthropology. She is a professor of anthropology and African studies at the University of Florida. She was also an associate dean at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University of Florida, in charge of international and interdisciplinary programs and undergraduate and graduate curriculum. She served as chief of the Women in Agricultural Production and Rural Development at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, where she had worldwide responsibility on women and development. She is the author of 9 books and over 60 articles focusing on Africa, agriculture, food security, women, entrepreneurship, and international development. She has done field work in 18 African countries and work in Jamaica and St. Lucia on agriculture and in the environment with Native Americans on kinship and social organization. Her current project is called SABRE, the Sub-Saharan Africa Business Environment, and she is focusing on the 20 largest African economies. She is currently serving as the Vice President of the International Academy of African Business and Development and as President of Culture and Agriculture, a section of the American Anthropological Association. She is a member of the United Nations Association and speaks at the UN's Committee on Sustainable Development. She is greatly concerned about the panel's topic and issues. Please welcome Dr. Anita Spring, and please remember, if you have any questions, fill it out in this yellow sheet right here and pass it on your right, and we'll collect them at the end of the session. Please welcome Dr. Anita Spring.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the panel this evening. Thank you, Emmanuel, for that very comprehensive introduction. I do appreciate it. Let me just tell everyone a little bit about the format for tonight's presentation. We have 3 speakers who will be providing the content, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But you as the audience have some responsibilities as well, and those little yellow cards, those are for your questions. And the reason that we would like you to write your questions and your name is because that way we'll collect them and we will be able to speak them very clearly so everyone can hear what they are and so the panelists can answer those questions. So please feel free to fill them out and pass them forward or to the side and we'll collect them. That way, because we are taping this presentation, we can get your questions heard loudly and clearly, and the panelists can deal with them. So I will ask you for that format. Let me just say the content of our discussion and of our presentations this evening is sort of an odd group of things, but when you think about it, you will see how it falls together and you will see how the local and the global come together. We are talking about our local situation in terms of agriculture, in terms of farm workers, in terms of human trafficking. We are talking about the international situation with an example from Haiti in terms of agricultural farm workers, in terms of trafficking, and in terms of migration. And that all comes together, and you will hear different parts of that in terms of the actual people, the definitions, the importance of agriculture and farm workers to our own food supply, and you will see how in the local situation and the international situation, this is of a very timely nature. We will hear from the 3 panelists. Dr. Kenneth Nunn, I'll introduce each one separately, will be talking about the legal aspects of this here in Florida and in Alachua County. I will give you his complete bio in just a minute. We'll go on to hear Dr. Gerald Murray of the Anthropology Department talking about his research, long-term research in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and about the problems of both migrants, farm workers, and human trafficking. And we'll be hearing from Dr. Sherry Kitchens, who has been actually working and counseling the victims themselves. So I'll introduce each person and their specialties one by one. But let me start with Dr. Kenneth Nunn. who's a professor at the University of Florida in the College of Law, the Levin College of Law, where he teaches criminal law, criminal procedure, African American history and law. He does seminars on police brutality, cultural studies, and race and crime. Professor Nunn received his bachelor's degree from Stanford University and his JD degree from the University of California at Berkeley, and the latter degree in 1984. Before joining the University of Florida, and that was in 1990, Professor Nunn had a very, very distinguished career practicing law. He was a public defender in San Francisco, and he was on the Public Defender Service in Washington, D.C. From 1987 to 86 to 87, he also served as the staff attorney for the Southern Africa Project of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under the law, and you know that that is a prelude to independence in South Africa. Professor Nunn has written widely on the impact of race on the criminal justice system and other legal institutions. His research interests include race and racism, international human rights, and the connections between law, culture, and society. Now, for his talk tonight, and this is why it's so important to have him here, he will discuss federal and state provisions that relate to human trafficking and the current legal status of the Haitian case in Alachua County. And this was a case that was brought in 2008. It is not yet resolved, but we think the courts are going to hear it this October, this year. In addition, he will discuss the inherent difficulties of investigating and prosecuting cases on human trafficking. Dr. Nunn.
Thank you, Dr. Spring. I always enjoy being on panels with you, and I appreciate that kind introduction. I also want to thank Vicki Mena for her work in organizing this panel. I want to thank Sheila Payne for inviting me to speak today. And of course, kudos should go to Paul Ortiz for organizing all of these very professional and seem to be highly technological people who are here today taping all of this. So my thanks to him in his absence. And of course, we're here chiefly due to the organizational work of the Interfaith Alliance for Immigrant Justice. And I want to thank each of you for your work that you do. Manuel gave a very nice introduction to the questions that we're going to deal with today. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to reemphasize things that he's already told you, because all of the important things about human trafficking he already told you. A very keen, intelligent, articulate man with a slight accent, but nonetheless somewhat soft-spoken. So you might have missed some of the key points that he's already given to you. But I'm going to go over some of those in my presentation today. What I want to do is talk a little bit about the background here of human trafficking throughout the globe, in Haiti, in Florida, in the United States, and other places. But basically, this is sort of just some background information so we can get our discussion here underway. You can see on the graphic that when we talk about human trafficking, what you'll find is that people will divide this up, and they'll talk about human trafficking in terms of there being source countries for human trafficking, and they'll talk about there being destination countries. And you know, quite often people will think that, well, the source country is a place like Haiti, the destination country would be a place like the United States, as in fact it turned out to be with this Haitian case that we had here in Alachua County, and the story that Manuel told us this afternoon, or this evening. But that doesn't always work out to be that way. Sometimes we'll see that a country that is in fact a source country will be a source country in certain circumstances, and then will be a destination country in other circumstances. So, you know, we can't necessarily make jump to any conclusions about where's the source country and where is not a source country. So basically, if you can read this, it's probably not as clear as I would want for it to be. Now my little pointer thing is everything always acts up when you don't want, oh, there we go, okay. All right, so source country here, destination country here, and basically people would move in this direction. And so then the question is why do we have that happening? Manuel told you, he said, look, it's not necessarily because people don't have options at home, okay? Quite often, sometimes there are push factors and sometimes there are pull factors, okay? And the pull factor is a desire for a better life. He was saying that quite often people who have means, and this is very important, pay attention to what he's saying, that people who are coming here who are being victimized by human traffickers are people who in their home country are people of means. Why? Because if they didn't have the money to pay what sometimes are referred to as mules, or coyotes, I'm sorry, to bring them over the border or bring them through on the raft or the raggedy, unseaworthy vessel that gets them to our shores, then they wouldn't be here. They're being exploited as well. Quite often we will hear stories of people who are telling, they promised me this, they told me I would have a job doing this, that I would get these wages, they told me I owed them money for my transport and that I had to work it off, and then they wind up here in virtual slavery without any records, without any documents, without any way to be able to go to the police and be able to then verify who they are and show that they are in fact victims as opposed to being people who are criminals themselves. So desire for a better life may be a pull factor. A push factor is quite often poverty. If we want to stop human trafficking, we eliminate poverty, and that will go 9/10 of the way to ending the problem of human trafficking. So poverty eradication is extremely important. Lack of education, both because lack of education does not allow you to have the opportunities that are necessary in order to improve your life where you are, and also because lack of education makes you vulnerable to people who come and give you some, some song and dance routine about how nice it's going to be in this new location where they want to take you. Public corruption is something that lends itself to there not being enforcement over these issues. There's a lot of discussion about human trafficking that's happening in Southeast Asia. Some of you have, as I do, Apple products. I've got an Apple computer over there, got my little iPhone around here somewhere. Those are made by Taiwanese companies. Those Taiwanese companies have factories that are in mainland China. There's been a lot of activity around conditions, work conditions in those factories and what's going on in those areas. And so one of the things that comes up, not so much to pick out Apple, could be Nike, could be basically anybody you buy your products from, is that sometimes these host companies, Vietnam, for example, Malaysia is another place where you see, I mean, these are big, huge football field type factories, but the people are not enforcing labor regulations. And so that becomes something that lends to human trafficking as well. On our side, it's not simply what's happening in the destination country, but the source country, but it's also what's happening in the destination country that leads to human trafficking. A demand for cheap labor, demand for cheap sex, because those are sort of the two main areas we're talking about, human trafficking for the sex trade, human trafficking for labor, farm labor, certainly, but other forms of labor as well. The desire for inexpensive products, that what we want is we want something that's going to be a reasonable price. We really don't investigate what it takes to have that price. And so that creates a demand for cheap labor, human trafficking, et cetera. All right, so now what happens is the people leave the source country, go to the destination country, and normally that happens actually by definition, if we're talking about the federal statute on human trafficking, in the United States. But nonetheless, if we just look at what happens across the board, it's always force, fraud, or coercion. They're either telling you, oh, we've got a great job for you, we're going to give you this great job, you're going to go someplace and you're going to be a waitress, you're going to make a lot of money, and then they'll lock you in a room and they'll treat you, you're basically turned into a prostitute, okay? So that's fraud, right? Or they'll drug you, throw you in the back of a van, you wake up someplace in a room somewhere, and you're basically, are actually in a field somewhere and you're forced to do labor. So force or coercion. If you don't do this, then we're going to take your parents' farm, okay? That's a good example because it gets us over here. Free trade policies. Why do I have that there? Because on both sides, free trade policies are things that lead to human trafficking or can contribute to human trafficking. How so, you would ask? What does NAFTA have to do with, with human trafficking, for example? Well, NAFTA in particular, I don't know how that works out in Haiti. Perhaps Professor Murray will tell us about that. But we could certainly talk about Mexico, for example. What happens is when you get into foreign countries and you have a regime that says we can bring products from the United States into that country that are going to undercut the market for domestically grown products, and then people who make a living on the land and they're able to have subsistence farming and be able to support themselves, can no longer do so. And then now they're out there and they're desperate and they're looking for positions, they're looking for things to do. So that will lead to human trafficking. So that's one of the side effects, the unintended consequences of some of the free trade policies that we're pursuing. All right, the most important factor, I think, that contributes to human trafficking is at the bottom, and I put it in bold. And it is simply the belief that some of us are not as human, not as entitled, not as privileged as the rest of us. And if we can eliminate that, both in the source country where people say, oh, I don't care about you, you're dirt, we'll just treat you any old way, and in the receiving country where people are saying, okay, well, we want cheap products and we want this and we want cheap labor, et cetera, then human trafficking goes away. Because in essence, what we are talking about is slavery. That's what this is. There was a gentleman, I was on a panel with him a couple weeks ago, who works for a very helpful organization called Boat People USA. Back in the 1970s, when people were leaving Southeast Asia on boats, right? Same thing we see happening in the Caribbean today because of the Vietnam War, came to the United States, called them boat people. Well, they're into the human traffic, stopping human trafficking. He told me he went to Congress and he had a lecture, and he gave, not a lecture, but a presentation before a congressional hearing panel, talked to them, told them about the work they were doing, the types of things they're trying to fix. And he said the congressman stopped him, looked at him, he said, sir, you're not talking about human trafficking. What you're talking about is slavery. This is slavery. And he said, yeah, that's right, I'm talking about slavery. So we use this nice little pretty term, but we have to understand that's what we're talking about. Very quickly, I want to talk about what the legal context of this is. That was my overview. The map is a map that says, well, here are countries that are involved in human trafficking. The red ones would be source countries, the blue ones would be destination countries. Don't believe it. I was in South Africa a couple years ago. I teach a class during the summer there. I had a white American female student who was in my class. She came to me one day, she said, Professor Nunn, I had a man come up to me and I'm so excited. He asked me if I wanted to be a model, and he had a job for me, and I could stay here in South Africa and he'd handle the business for me to get the immigration issues all worked out. And it would be a top-notch international model, and I'd go here, there, and there. And I said, honey, don't you believe it, okay? I said, you can do what you want. No, I was actually a little, more calm, because you don't never want to tell anybody don't do something, because then they'll do it. So you always say, well, you might want to think about this. And I started telling her about human trafficking and how people always tell you, people don't step into this because they tell you, oh, guess what? We're going to make you a sex slave and lock you in the basement and tie you up. You'll never get out. They won't tell you that. I mean, they tell you, no, you'll be a glamorous, person and a model and this, that, and the other. So these things do happen in places off the map and in other ways. Multi-billion-dollar industry that we're talking about, the International Labor Organization, which is an arm of the UN, says that we're talking about $44.3 billion a year in terms of the labor value of the people who are exploited as a consequence of human trafficking. So if you can think about that, that means that somewhere there's an employer, somewhere there's a consumer that is saving up to almost $45 billion a year by not paying people, okay? So that's what we're talking about. Now this slide is not my slide, comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, and I don't think it's quite accurate, so I didn't want to use it, but then I started playing around with PowerPoint and I couldn't do anything better, so now you have this slide instead. But I think the percentages are about right for the United States as a whole, where about half of human trafficking is going to be sex trafficking, okay? People who go into prostitution, pornography, other sex work areas. So we have that, and then they say 27. Now, a lot of this, the next largest category is people who work in the home, domestic servants. So you see a lot of that happens around the country and around the world. Agriculture, 10%, and then industrial work and miscellaneous here for probably the remainder. Florida is actually a little different because in Florida, as it turns out, agriculture is the biggest area that we're talking about in terms of human trafficking. So most of what we're talking about is not sex work, it is agricultural work in the state of Florida. There's still a significant amount in the state of Florida that is domestic servitude, but after agriculture, sex work, the third category in Florida is going to be the hospitality industry, hotels, restaurants, and things of that nature. So that's the way it breaks out in Florida, breaks out a little bit differently. Here, what I want to talk about quickly is the state law, federal law, and then the, hopefully I'm doing okay. We're going to talk about state law, federal law, and then a couple provisions of international law that govern the human trafficking issue. When we're talking about state law, the first thing that we should know is that a lot of things that happen with human trafficking are just crimes in and of themselves, okay? So false arrest, that is holding someone against their will, usually under some color of authority. False imprisonment, which is very, basically it's false imprisonment. Kidnapping is taking somebody, but just holding them against their will is false imprisonment. So those would be crimes. Assault, battery, all of that stuff, rape, because quite often rape is used as a means of controlling people and as a means of breaking people into the sex industry. So basically all of those could be crimes that are up there. Florida is rather unique because Florida has, in fact, a statute that governs human trafficking specifically. And they've had that statute since 2004. Okay, so under the Florida statute, they tell you that if you transport or harbor someone, move them, basically it's the transportation of the person, the movement of the person that is the crux of the issue. But they say anybody who engages in human trafficking or receives services from human trafficking commits a felony. So that's basically what the Florida statute does. Now, unfortunately, in Florida, there's very limited information about any prosecutions under this statute. And Ms. Kitchens may know better than I do, but I don't think there's been any prosecutions because I couldn't find any, okay, under this statute. Everything I see says, well, maybe, but I haven't seen anything on that. So it's there. And it's actually a real powerful legislative statement because they have this preamble and they say all these terrible things about human trafficking and what they want to do to make it stop. So I think it's great that our legislature has stepped up to the plate, The problem now is we need to make sure that our prosecutors are on top of the game, knowing that this statute is here, being prepared to do something with these cases and actually go after them. We need to train law enforcement so that they're looking in these areas to try and find these cases. So those are all things that we have to do. The most important, and actually let me go back just to the previous slide here. There are a number of federal statutes that could address human trafficking. We have the Mann Act, which is otherwise known as the White Slave Trafficking Act from 1910, which basically says that if you transport a person across state lines to engage in sexual activity, then that is a federal offense. So some of you may be aware of that from these old B movies and things like that. There's what's called the PROTECT Act, which is a nice acronym for prosecutorial remedies and other tools to end the exploitation of children today, was what that stands for. And it basically prohibits sex with minors abroad when it's performed by U.S. citizens. So this so-called sex tourism where people go, these horrendous things where people go off to these other countries that have sex with children. If you're a U.S. citizen and you do that and you're reported, you can be prosecuted, you can be put in jail for 20 years under this statute. So that's a good thing to have that statute. The most significant statute is this Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which was originally passed in 2000 and had a supplement passed in 2008. Basically, that statute prohibits certain types of conduct, slavery, forced labor. There's trafficking, sex trafficking of children. An interesting thing with this statute, if you notice here, it says sex trafficking by fraud or coercion, okay? Reason why they did that is they said, we want to be able to distinguish sex trafficking from run-of-the-mill prostitution, as they see it. So there's this political issue where people are afraid to really prosecute this sex trafficking because people have this view that, well, these women are not really victims, they may be women of bad morals, and so et cetera, et cetera. So there's always that aspect, that angle in all these statutes. So you can get up to 20 years, life sentence whenever you're talking about really physical harm. Physical harm comes to someone, you can wind up with a life sentence under this statute. The most important thing about this statute, however, is what's the latter part, the protection for victims, that victims, when they meet certain characteristics, can get assistance from the state. They can be treated as refugees. They can get a particular type of visa so they can stay in the country. And so the purpose of that, of course, is that if you're now a victim of human trafficking, if you're a Haitian who's been brought to Alachua County to work in the farms and you want to get out, you don't have a fear of going to the police because you don't have to think that the only thing that's going to happen is you'll get deported. So we have to get that information out to the communities, okay? Here are some international laws. I don't want to spend any, well, actually, I've got 5 minutes, so it's more, I can briefly go through the international laws, but basically what they are, the UN Convention Against Organized Crime goes after organized crime, and human trafficking is one of the areas that organized crime is identified in that particular protocol, or that convention. The Palermo Protocol are sometimes referred to as the CRC, Convention on the Rights of the Child. There's an addition to that where the signatories say that they're going to implement legal regimes that will stop human trafficking. So the United States has signed that, other countries have signed that. That means they undertake as an international obligation to do something about human trafficking. The International Criminal Court is important. The United States has not signed that, doesn't want to be a part of the International Criminal Court. That's another story. But for those nations that are, a prosecution can happen under the International Criminal Court. And in fact, some of the prosecutions that have happened in the Liberian Civil War, the Congolese War, are basically have human trafficking aspects because child soldiering is considered a human trafficking violation. If you bring a child and make him turn into a child soldier, that's a human trafficking violation.
All right, so let me get to my conclusion. There are 3 slogans, and I think that really wraps up everything that we need to say. The first important one was on the first slide. We have to treat all humans with respect and dignity, okay? Or love and dignity, I say. I think that's even better, with love, respect, and dignity. And if we do that, then human trafficking goes away, because we just can't see treating people as less than human. Enforcement is a challenge. The legal regime is there. There are statutes that are available that can be used. The important thing is to make sure we enforce them. Part of that is educating our prosecutors and our police officers, and also educating the public so that they are looking for these things, they're reporting them to people, and at the same time they're encouraging the agencies in their jurisdictions to do something serious about human trafficking. And then finally, sunshine is the best disinfectant. It's so important what you all are doing here today, what the Interfaith Alliance for Immigrant Justice is doing with this whole week of activities to educate people about what's going on, to let us know that this is an issue that's happening, so we don't turn our backs to it or turn around or act as if it's not important. It's all important for us to be on top of it and to see it. And if we do that, then we can stop human trafficking, and it's one of the most critical issues that we face today. Just like slavery, slavery was ended in its old form. It's in a new guise. We need to end this too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nunn. That was very, very good. And it now gives me pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Professor Gerald Murray. He's recently retired from the anthropology department at the University of Florida, where he taught for 23 years. He got his bachelor's degree at Harvard and a PhD from Columbia. Now, in the early 1970s, he and his wife Maria, who is from the Dominican Republic, lived in a Haitian village for 18 months while they were doing anthropological field work. And since then, since the last 20 years, or in the last 20 years, he has consulted on a number of development projects, I should say many, in rural Haiti. His longest assignment was a 2-year one as chief of party for a United States Agency for International Development project that was on agroforestry. And then in 2004, he did a study of trafficking of Haitian children in Haiti and also in neighboring Dominican Republic. And he's prepared several research reports on this and also on ethnic tensions and relationships between the border of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Now, since the very tragic and awful Haitian earthquake, he has been to Haiti twice. The first visit, he assisted Save the Children in their programming, and the second visit that he made with Maria, they set up a scholarship fund using their own funds and those of friends and relatives to be able to send something like 80 children, village children, to school. Now, in his professional life, he amazes all of us because he has studied 15 languages, but he is most fluent in Haitian Creole and Spanish, and he's finishing his 4th book in Spanish that's going to be published in the DR. For his talk, he's going to talk about Haitian migrant children in the DR, and then Haitian migrant workers in Florida, and so making that connection. The slave children of Haiti, people are always shocked by the apparent willingness of many Haitians to, quote unquote, give their children away to others to adopt or to otherwise raise or educate, I should say. The results sometimes lead to serious abuse, sometimes to de facto child servitude, and many of the kids, as soon as they're old enough, flee and try to get out of the situation. Another problem in the larger cities of the DR is that Haitian children have been organized by adults, Haitian adults, into bands of beggars, and if you stop at a traffic light, they're there begging and trying to get you to contribute to that. But they are really enslaved, those children. It's really terrible. Most migrant farm workers from Haiti actually go to the Dominican Republic, and they often pay Haitian smugglers to help them across the border, and sometimes they will work for lower wages than the Dominicans. Most of them don't have passports. They can be stopped and deported, but in actuality, they do have free will to choose their employers and to actually go on that movement from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. Now, the situation in Florida, however, by contrast, can be quite different. And he will argue that it's a great paradox that, in fact, the Haitians in Florida are more vulnerable to deception and coercion. So I'll give you Professor Murray.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spring, and I've been enlightened by the two presentations that preceded. I'll try to relate what I say to those presentations. Let me see if I have the technology down. I'm going to talk, I've outlined the presentation. I'm going to just give some background information first. Then I want to talk about agrarian labor arrangements in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Then I want to talk about the Restavec syndrome. Restavec means live with. This is the syndrome by which children are relocated. And what's going on here? Okay, it's doing something to me. Okay. Okay. If I'm going to have problems with the PowerPoint, I'll just skip it, okay? I feel very bad talking about slavery in Haiti because Haiti is famous for having abolished slavery in the most radical fashion. Haitians were not emancipated from above, as is true of most of the other slave societies. Haitians liberated themselves. And it's a paradox, and a painful paradox, that slavery is going on, that there are slave-like arrangements going on in Haiti, in which the protagonists themselves are Haitians. I mean, it's a paradox that this would happen in the society most famous for the abolition, the radical abolition of slavery from below. It's a sad paradox. And I don't like talking about this, but I mean, this is happening, so let's talk about it. First of all, smuggling versus trafficking. I don't have the legal expertise that Dr. Nunn has, but smuggling of people into the Dominican Republic and into the United States of Haitians has been going on. Smuggling is a service. The people who are smuggled have paid smugglers. They're called boucons or passeurs in Haiti. Trafficking, on the other hand, entails coercion, deceit. In the Dominican Republic, I had the problem that the word for smuggling in Spanish is traficar. Like traffic, okay, and so it sounds like there's a lot of there's a great deal of smuggling, of tráfico de haitianos, of trafficking of Haitians in the Dominican Republic, not of trafficking, of smuggling. You know, that does not necessarily entail trafficking, but there is a distinction. Trafficking occurs, in my view, and I don't know if this is legal. You know, when there is some sort of deception or coercion, you can talk about trafficking. But the Haitian smugglers bringing Haitians into the Dominican Republic are performing a service to the people that pay them for this. Labor traffic versus sex traffic. Dr. Nunn alluded to this. I'm going to focus simply on labor. Most Haitian smuggling and trafficking entails not the sex trade, but rather it's labor migration of one sort or another, rather than the sex trade. I'm not saying it doesn't occur, but I'm saying the major problem is with trafficking that goes on around issues of labor, both child labor and adult labor. The age and gender of victims, I believe most victims of trafficking are either women or children worldwide. In the case we're talking about, however, here in Florida, a situation has arisen in which adult males, Haitian males, are trafficked. And that's a statistically, internationally anomalous, it's an anomalous situation. I just wanted to point that out to try to fit this into the larger picture. Haitian dilemma. Dr. Nunn has stated very clearly, following up on what Emmanuel said, trafficking occurs because this poverty. Migration occurs largely because there's poverty. Some migration is driven by other factors, by military factors, but in Haiti, the poverty in Haiti, I'm not going to play the same violin that you hear all the time. It's true. The economic situation in Haiti, even before the earthquake, is desperate. And after the earthquake, it's become even more desperate. And one of the things that I have to say as an anthropologist, emigration occurs in many societies. But it is no exaggeration, I don't think, to say that in Haiti, at the moment, the principal service you can perform to your children is getting them out of Haiti. When I did my field work in the 1970s, this was not the case. The principal service you did for your children was to acquire more land so they would inherit land. That system is gone. People still do farming, but now if you want to help your children, you have to get them out of Haiti. There's a lot of rhetoric about the development of Haiti and the $1 billion that's committed and going back. I've talked to ordinary Haitians about this. They don't believe it. There is no functioning government in Haiti. If that money falls into the hands of the Haitian government, it is going to disappear. It will be misused. They don't believe the rhetoric. The NGOs are beginning to have a bad name because they can be as predatory as government institutions in terms of what they do with the money. The situation is desperate, and if you are a Haitian and you want to help your children, you get them out of Haiti. Not permanently necessarily. Haitians are building houses. Immigrants are building houses back in the village where I was. They maintain a connection to Haiti. They are sending remittances. They're not turning their back on Haiti. But to survive, you have to spend at least part of your life outside of Haiti. And that opens the door to trafficking. Schooling has become extremely important in the Haitian worldview. You want your children to go to school. The schools are not very good, but 90% of the children in Haiti that are in school, and about half of the children, or 60%, go to school at some time in their life. Of those that go to school, 90% of them have to go to private schools because there are no state schools sufficient in quantity. And to get into one of the state schools, you have to have munpa. You have to have connections or pay a bribe. So the education is very important, and this is what leads to child slavery, and I'll show you the logical connection. Let me go very quickly now. First of all, how is labor recruited in Haiti itself? It's a very benign system. By the way, you do not have in Haiti the same degree of large landholders and landless people. Most Haitian families in the rural areas have access to their own land. Not a lot of land, but they have access to their land. So there is a great deal of labor mobilization, but it's usually between peasants and peasants. I've listed, and I'm just going to go through this very quickly. There's unpaid family labor. There's exchange labor where, you know, men or women will get together. Today we work on my land, tomorrow we work on your land. There is the famous Combit festive labor parties, as it were, in which a better off person organizes and pays, generally in the form of food and alcohol, and it's a festive occasion. But now there's also wage labor. Haitians, there are two types of wage labor in Haiti and elsewhere. There's what's called, there would be day labor. It's called acheter journée. You buy a day from someone, or you actually give a job. You contract for a specific piece of work, and the person does it, you know, as fast as he can. So you pay. Those are the two. Okay, these labor mobilization arrangements in Haiti are benign. They are not exploitative. They're usually done among people of the same social class. The younger people tend to sell their labor to older people. In the Dominican Republic now, it's different. Now, under Trujillo and under Duvalier, Haitians were brought over exclusively, it was a government-to-government arrangement, they were brought over exclusively to work on the sugarcane plantations. They lived in the bateyes. The batey in Spanish, it's an indigenous word, it meant the house of the, but today it means a place where, it's a community where Haitians live. And during Trujillo and even after Trujillo, as long as Duvalier was there, the labor, now, I wouldn't call it trafficking. What it was is the governments, the Dominicans paid the Haitian government so much per person, but then the word was sent out and Haitians would volunteer and come and try to get to the Dominican Republic. Now, when they were there, they couldn't leave the bate. Okay, is this trafficking? Is this slavery? I don't know. I'm going to let the lawyers figure that, okay? But it was a voluntary migration of people to the Dominican Republic. Trujillo dies, Duvalier gets kicked out in '86, and we have a different system. Now the floodgates opened up and Haitians begin migrating en masse into the Dominican Republic. And to get there, you have to pay smugglers to take you over. In the beginning, you may start off on a sugarcane plantation, but now the movement of Haitian labor in the Dominican Republic has gone onto the farms of Dominican. Probably 80%, maybe 90% of the labor done on Dominican farms today is done by Haitians. This is totally different from what it was back then. Now, what are the conditions under which they're contracted? Okay, in terms of wage levels, it's often said that Haitians work more cheaply than Dominicans will work for, and that is true in some areas in the border areas. I recently was in the border areas where the daily rate for a Haitian was 100 pesos, Dominican pesos, and that would be the equivalent of about $3. Which is far below. But if they go elsewhere in the country, I've seen them able to compete on the labor market, and they can get paid as high as Dominicans. And in the construction areas as well, a skilled Haitian can get paid maybe $10 a day. Okay, the key figure, and I think this is where trafficking, I think this particular, if I were to identify one of the sources of eventual trafficking in Florida, a key figure in this is what, I don't know what to call, you'd call him the labor broker, okay? In other words, a Dominican farmer who needs Haitian labor, you don't go and try to deal with 20 different Haitians. They don't speak your language most of the time. You don't speak their language. So the situations that has emerged is there is a bilingual Haitian who's lived in the Dominican Republic for many years, speaks Spanish, has connections. The farm owner, if I'm a Dominican farm owner, I'll deal with him. Okay, I need 20 people, and I'll pay so much. And he goes out, and he recruits the 20 people. The farmer, I don't even know the names of the Haitians that are working for me. I have a relationship with this fellow, but I only deal with him. And in fact, when time for payment comes, I will pay him, and he will then pay the Haitians. That's where the opportunity for exploitation comes in. The Haitians may not even know how much they're theoretically supposed to be paid. The fellow doing it is also a Haitian as well. The workers, I should say, may not even know. Now, this is an example of a potentially good arrangement. This is a convenient arrangement. It's a good way of finding labor. It's a good way of recruiting labor. But like all good arrangements, it is subject to abuse. And this is, okay. This is traffic. Again, it's often abusive, but I don't think it's trafficking. Haitians can do change the jobs. There's no confiscation of documents because they don't have any documents most of the time. Most of the Haitians in the Dominican Republic. I'm not saying keep the passport. There's a very low incidence of coercion. Now, sometimes on construction jobs, what the Dominican in this case, what he'll do is to avoid paying wages, and this is done occasionally because if it were done regularly, Haitians would not work in the construction. It's done occasionally. What you do is you fall behind a month in your payments, and then before the time comes you're finally going to pay, you call the army in. The Haitians are very vulnerable to shakedowns from the army because they don't have documents. They're vulnerable to shakedowns, and they're vulnerable to sudden mass expulsions in the Dominican Republic. And so this is what, and so occasionally it's reported that construction bosses will organize a roundup before they pay the Haitians. This happens. I've heard it enough to know it's not exaggeration. It's not the norm, however. Haitians wouldn't work in the construction industry if this were the norm, but it does happen. The major abusers of Haitians in the Dominican Republic are the Dominican military. And I have to say that, and they're abusing them not because Haitians are black, because the soldiers, Dominican soldiers doing it are often as black as the Haitians that are. It's not a racial issue. It's that the Haitians they're vulnerable because they don't have documents. They can be shaken down or thrown out. Situation in Florida. Now, I haven't done field interviews here in Florida, so I'm talking, I just know from what I've read. Here, to come to Florida, it's much more complicated than going to the Dominican Republic. So the Haitians have been, they were given, and I read the document that was given to me in an email, they were given false promises. They were going to work full-time. They'd be able to pay off in a couple of years. They were given false promises. Are they given false promises in the Dominican Republic? There's too much moving back and forth for any Haitian to be tricked about the Dominican Republic. They know it's not the same as going to the United States. There's a heavier dependence in Florida on logistics. Now, the ones, I believe that the Haitians who were trafficked in Florida, I believe they all had passports. So I'm assuming that they somehow got legal, and I'm guessing at this, you know, that they somehow were here legally. They were not undocumented. But the dependence on the logistics, you know, it makes you more dependent on the person that organizes your airplane trip, and you're in this strange land and you're going to find work. You're more dependent on the broker than you are in the Dominican Republic. Yeah, the passports were confiscated, yeah. But you know, not by the employer, by the way. Not by the Anglo employer, by the Haitian trafficker. There's also debt bondage here because it costs more. Now, you have to lay some money up front to get over here, but they must not have, and I'm going they must not have paid everything. They must have owed something still to the trafficker. So they are in debt to the trafficker. This is simply not the case when they cross the border into the Dominican Republic. So there's a form of debt bondage here. There's a $3,000 fee. Now, I don't know if they paid $3,000 up front and had to pay more, or if they paid part of it and then they had to continue. These are details that will probably come out in the court trials. I don't know the details of this. And I repeat, I haven't done field work on that here. I would love to. I would love to interview the Haitians involved in this, not the traffickers necessarily, but in this passport confiscation, and there's probably no contact with the employer. There can't be because the employer doesn't speak Creole. So the Haitians probably have no contact with the employer, and the employer probably has no. I'm not sure if the employer knows what's going on. You know, that's another question. I won't assume he does. I won't assume he doesn't. It's a question. And the wages, it must be, again, it's an assumption, it must be that the employer is not paying the individual Haitians because the accusation is they were unpaid. I cannot conceive, that an employer would dare not to pay wages. So he must have been paying the wages to the intermediary, and the intermediary is the one who withheld the wages. These are all hypotheses on my part. Boy, would I love to have just an hour interview with a couple of people to find out, so I'm not guessing at this anymore. And there's less mobility than in the DR. Okay, let's talk about slave children. How am I doing, Anita? 5 minutes. Okay, slave children. First of all, child relocation, a survival strategy in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, in the Dominican Republic, in Haiti, and in other places, I don't want to generalize the whole Caribbean, but is to relocate your children. There are many households that take in children that are not biological children. And the basic strategy is, it's a form of migration. The basic motive behind it is, if you live in a rural area, you have a lot of children, you can't raise them, okay, school is very important. So what you will do is you will relocate your child, one of your children, or one or more of your children, you'll relocate them in an urban home that has, and the deal is you prefer to relocate with a relative, but if not, you'll relocate with someone else. The child will be placed with someone else. The deal is, in theory, the child gets education, schooling, maybe not in an elite college, but gets schooling, food, shelter, clothing, and medical care in exchange for labor inside the home. And now the sending parent views this as a good deal. The receiving family views it as a just deal. But oftentimes now, it just doesn't happen that way. It used to happen in its original form. The earliest surrogate caretakers were middle or upper class families who brought in the child, and the child worked as a servant in the house, and the child then was sent to school, and the child was better off educationally than he was back home. But what's happened is that it's now, even the urban poor are taking in surrogate children. A poor family living in Cité Soleil or in one of the barrios of Haiti, of Port-au-Prince, they need labor. The woman is out working, there may be small children, and they need someone to take care of infants. They need someone to stand in line and get water. So they will bring in, themselves being poor, they will bring in another child, an outside child. And now here is where the Haitians I've interviewed on this have completely different and diverse opinions, one from another. Many students here in Gainesville, Haitian students, have had the experience of having children, outside children, in their homes, and they say they're not mistreated. They're treated like one of the family. I've heard this from Haitians here. They insist on this. Others say, and in Haiti I've heard, the children are brutalized. They're treated horribly. They're beaten. They sleep on the floor. They eat separately. They don't eat the same food as anyone else, and they're brutalized. Okay, you hear that enough to believe it. So here is an arrangement that has evolved into a very insidious form of child abuse. Now, is this trafficking? This is interesting. It's certainly abusive. I don't want to get hung up on a legal technicality. It is unquestionably abusive. But it wouldn't fall into the category of trafficking, I don't think. They're not crossing international borders. Maybe that's one of the things. No money is necessarily exchanging hands. So it wouldn't legally classify as trafficking, but it's certainly abusive and should be looked into. Now, the Haitian government can't even collect the garbage in Port-au-Prince. It's unlikely that the Haitian government is going to get involved in this in any way. I'm just reporting it without knowing exactly. And when I interview Haitians about other things and I bring this up, there's always a moment of embarrassment. People know this goes on but don't like to talk about it. Because they've probably been involved in this themselves, either as senders of children or as receivers of children. It's a very delicate matter in Haiti, but it goes on. Haitian street beggars, now in the Dominican Republic, okay, there's an FAO report, or one UN agency put a report out that there are several thousands of Haitian children trafficked into the Dominican Republic. Here, my own research, which I did with a fellow anthropologist, does not support this. You know, there are Haitians brought over, Haitian children brought into the Dominican Republic, but they're brought usually by relatives. Or on occasion they are sent. The parents send them under the hope that they will get some kind of work in the Dominican Republic. They may go just for vacations and then come back. But these children, at least some of them, are organized into beggar bands. And this is what drives the Dominicans have never seen this before. There's begging in the Dominican Republic, but usually you beg, you go and stand in front of a church. You know, in Sunday Mass. You know, the begging is institutionalized in the DR as well. But here, you know, it's done in street corners, and the Haitian women who do this often have infants in their arms. And it is stated, and I have no reason to, you know, this is all radio vemba, as they say. These are rumors, but that the children are rented many times. You know, you rent a child, or you promise so much of the proceeds. Okay, there, all right. And this is going on. And I will conclude, Restovex in Florida, I've seen newspaper reports that there have been children in Florida that have been found in this. It would be much harder to do that in Florida. And I was going to conclude, you know, conceptual and definitional issues. What is slavery? What is trafficking? Let me skip that. Practical. How do we detect farms or household where people are being held in de facto involuntary servitude? How do we prosecute those that are doing it? How do we prevent it from rather than me rambling on, maybe we can talk about these things during the discussion period. Thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor Murray. Our last speaker, before we get to our question and answer session, I hope people have been filling out or writing questions on those yellow cards. Does anybody need any of them? If you raise your hand, we'll get someone over here to bring some over to you, or you can get them on the table. Our last speaker is Sherry Kitchens, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Gainesville, and she's been doing this since 1999. She's got a bachelor's degree from Emory University and a master's in counselor education from the University of Florida. Now, this is a very interesting entry into this field. She's worked with child trafficking victims since 1996, and in that year, one of her first child clients was trafficked from a small rural community, I think outside Miami. Outside of Gainesville, to work in the strip clubs in Miami, okay. And the girl was 13, and that was her entry, so to speak, into being, to working with the victims of trafficking in the state of Florida. It was not called trafficking then. At the time, she was working for Family and Youth Behavioral Services, working with runaway, ungovernable, and truant youth and their families in Alachua, Gilchrist, and Levy counties. So she started something called the Child Advocacy Center in 2005, and she serves as its president and CEO. And that center has brought to Gainesville one of the first training courses on human trafficking, and they brought it from the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights that's located at FSU. Now, from this training and collaboration with her colleague Tyson Elliott, who is now the Florida statewide human trafficking coordinator, they started the Alachua County Human Trafficking Task Force in 2008. So this is something that she spent a lot of time doing, both in her professional life in terms of the counseling of people, number one, and number two, putting something into action, actually forming training units and advocacy groups here in Gainesville and Alachua County. And this group has provided training, technical assistance in terms of investigations and in terms of services and resources for the victims. And it has also provided a venue, a place to discuss human trafficking issues. For the past 3 years, Sherry Kitchens has worked with social service providers in the area to develop and provide services for adult and child victims of human trafficking. And she's also a co-chair of the Alachua County Human Trafficking Task Force. She's been doing that since 2007. So I'll turn the platform over to her, and hopefully you'll continue writing your questions as well. Sherry Kitchens.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and how wonderful. I've learned so much this evening, just myself. I didn't bring a PowerPoint this evening, mainly because I want to share with you what I've learned from the folks that I've worked with over the past several years, and just want to share with you some of their the needs that they've shown to us in our community as they've come to join our community and become a part of the fabric of our community. I think one of the important things to recognize is that the folks that have become a part of our community from Haiti here have really come here, they've come here to work. This was not a situation that these folks expected to be in. When we talk about coercion, they were swindled. I mean, they really expected to come into a place and have a better life. I think all of the things that we've heard tonight very much are the case. And when you talk to folks that have found themselves as human trafficking victims, they don't identify themselves as human trafficking victims. When you start talking about human trafficking and teaching them about that label or those words, sometimes those are really new concepts for them. And talk about the laws and what their rights are. All of those things are very new ideas. They may realize that they've been deceived and things aren't how they thought they would be. and it's very important as victim advocates to talk to them about those things and explain what their rights are, especially in this country. When they find themselves here, and regardless of what country they're coming from, things are very different in the United States generally from where they're coming from, and it's sort of like when you find yourself in a bad situation in the United States. Okay, say you've lost your job, you've lost your home, you maybe have found yourselves falling on hard times. Okay, you generally know what the laws and the rules of our society are. You might generally know how to get some of your needs met. You might have family around. You may have family, even if it's family in another state. You may have an idea about how things generally work here. Folks that are trafficked from another country, they don't have that luxury. They don't have the luxury of even a bed to go back to. They don't have the luxury of knowing how the systems in the country work. They don't have the luxury of knowing whether they can trust the law enforcement folks that have come to rescue them. They don't have the luxury of knowing that the social service providers or the NGOs, what we call the non-governmental organizations, or the social service providers that are there to provide food, clothing, housing, shelter, medical care, are folks that they can really trust, or they are part of the deceit. They don't know those things. And so when you talk about the needs that human trafficking victims have to start with, trust is essential in that process. Many times human trafficking victims are told that they are going to be deported. That is a significant psychological coercive measure in their life. It was very helpful, Professor Murray, to hear you talk about that and how that is for Haitians, that is significant in their world, and something that happens quite regularly for them. That helps me understand the folks that I've met and that I've learned about, and it makes that psychological coercion, some of the victims that I've met, helps me understand the psychological coercion that being told that they were going to be deported if they didn't do what they were being told. That is the kind of fear that is gripping kind of fear. Being in an isolated area, not being able to have contact with anyone that they could trust or anyone that could actually help them. Not having transportation to get anywhere to ask for any kind of help, even if there was maybe someone that they felt like they could reach out to or to trust. Those are very, very frightening circumstances to find yourself in, and you don't speak the language, and you can't explain what your problem is, and you can't prove who you are. Those are significant hurdles to get over when you're trying to even ask for help. So for myself as a service provider, working with law enforcement, that's both local law enforcement and federal law enforcement, and doing some training with those folks, recognizing that we're not talking about, victims. When you're talking about victims coming from other countries, we have to take those things into account. We're talking about folks that feel really stripped of everything. And even working with our social service providers to help them learn how to provide services for human trafficking victims coming from other countries. I've heard, well, provide them empowerment, give them the telephone numbers, have them call. Well, how are they supposed to make phone calls about their housing situation? How are they supposed to make phone calls about food if they don't speak the language? And they don't know on the other side of the phone that there's going to be someone who speaks their language or even their dialect of their language. Translation services in our situation, in several situations of human trafficking here in Alachua County, have become very significant. So from the social service provider standpoint, having a bank of interpreters and translators became significant. And not just during the rescue and recovery phase of our work, but in every single element of the work that we did. If you're trying to find out if someone is having pain, what about those very initial early medical concerns that a victim might be having that could be related to the trafficking incidents and maybe beatings that they've been having, or headaches that they're having due to malnutrition because the food that they're receiving or had been given is very different than the food that they had back home. I think that's something that is happens very frequently with human trafficking victims that we were not prepared for in this community. We provided lots of canned goods for human trafficking victims here when we first started working with victims. Great. We have lots and lots of food in this community that we can get our hands on really quickly if we need to. Boxes of it. Boxes of it and boxes of it. Okay? If you take boxes and boxes of canned food, boxed food, to victims of human trafficking from Haiti, sometimes guess what's going to happen? They're going to look at it and say, what is that? What do you do with that? How do you cook that? And you really want me to eat that? Not because they're trying to be disrespectful or turn their nose up at it, but they literally, it is not a part of their diet. And one of the things that we learned very early on is that when you deprive someone of the things that in their diet they're used to having, it sets their bodies up for malnutrition, which can be very medically dangerous for them. Another thing that we needed to, and we learned in our human trafficking service provision, is that some of the, we needed to take a look at some of the communicable diseases. We need to look at tuberculosis. We needed to look at making sure that any of the victims that we're working with had the immediate medical care that they needed. We needed to make sure that they had STD testing and that they had immediate medical attention, immediate medical care, and any sort of communicable diseases or infections that our service providers could get, that we were educating our service providers about that and about universal precautions. Those were things that we were not prepared for. We were ready to help. Absolutely, roll up your sleeves, do whatever we needed to do. But those are things that we needed to be aware of. When I talked about providing services during the rescue and recovery phase, I also think that it's important to realize that when you have human trafficking victims that need services, they need services for an awfully long time. And it's not something that the needs go away overnight, or the needs are taken care of just a one-shot deal, or even over a course of months. It can be your relationship with folks can be over a very long period of time. You heard the professors talk early on about the prosecution of the cases in one, how there haven't been a whole slew of prosecutions. But you also heard that, you've got prosecutors that may not have a lot of education of prosecuting human trafficking cases, and law enforcement don't have a lot of education about investigating human trafficking cases. Folks just don't really know what to do with these cases. They're complicated. They take an awfully long time to investigate. Traffickers are very, very good at what they do. Okay? Human trafficking is sometimes difficult to detect. They're difficult to investigate. They're labor intensive. They are resource intensive, both from an investigative, prosecutorial standpoint, and from a resource management and providing resources for victims that need help. After the rescue and recovery phase, which can be anywhere between a couple of weeks, because you may rescue 10 victims, and then there are several more that you didn't know were there, especially in a farm and labor situation. Farms are sometimes large. There can be several different living compounds within the farms, and depending on the traffickers, they also can hide or transport or reallocate those workers different places across whatever farms and however many different locations they have. So recovery can happen in phases. Professor Nunn talked about the T visa process and the Trafficking Protection Act. Sounds great. There's federal money. There's federal money for human trafficking victims. Well, just like anything in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries too, everything is a process, and everything takes time. Think about the red tape that sometimes it takes when you have to go get your driver's license renewed. Has anybody had that experience? I went the other day, and I had to go back 3 times because I didn't realize I had to bring this form of ID and that form of ID and this form of ID. Same kind of thing. It can take an awfully long time for all of the different pieces to fall into place for human trafficking victims. The victims that I've worked with, it's taken up to 3 months to get their first certification letter. It's taken up to 6 months to get their first level of refugee benefits. It's taken up to a year to get their first continued presence letter, to get regular benefits, just like a citizen of the United States would get, and over a year to get their first T visa. Okay, that is a long time for a community to provide services for human trafficking victims. Okay, now I just have to say that my hat is off to the investigators, the federal prosecutors, and the social service providers and the victim advocates in this community in Alachua County, because they are fantastic. When you think about the number of victims across the community, not only in the Haitian case that we've been talking about this evening, but also the other cases that are to be discussed at a later time, I'm sure, that have been also worked. This is an incredibly supportive community and a community that really cares about victims in this community, and I think it's really important to recognize that that those things have been happening even though you're not hearing about it. But it has drained our resources quite a bit. 3 years ago, we didn't have thank you. We did not have the structure set up to provide services for, or any funding coming into this community to provide services for human trafficking victims. At this point in time, we have 3 providers that receive federal funding to provide services for human trafficking victims. About 2 years ago, our Access Center, through the Department of Children and Families and Refugee Services, now knows how to process the food stamps and refugee benefits for human trafficking victims. These are huge steps into making this a friendlier community for human trafficking victims, and it all goes to the professionals that have been working in this area for the last 3 years. When I talk to other service providers across Florida and across the country, what I hear is, oh my gosh, in Little Alachua County, oh my gosh, you've had more victims there than we've had in Sacramento, California over the last year. And so in terms of being on the map in the human trafficking world, we're there. And so make no mistake, we have been providing services and investigations here in this community for quite some time. It's also important to recognize that it's a problem that it isn't going away and needs more resources and needs more attention. I was very happy to see the article in the newspaper, was it 2 days ago, that the federal investigators were saying that this was an issue here in this area and that needed the attention and needed the resources towards it. So I appreciate those folks who contributed to that effort, and because before 3 years ago there was nothing in the paper in this area about human trafficking. So I applaud all of you for being here and for taking the time. It's so nice to see so many faces in this room, and for taking the time to learn about this issue and providing the support to those in the community that really need it. So thank you.
Sure, you're right there. Why don't you take that question?
Okay. This question is, what kind of care and recovery programs are offered for those who are liberated from human trafficking? Are they offered U.S. citizenship? There are programs for those that are liberated from human trafficking. They're varied. There are programs that provide housing. The United States Council on Catholic Bishops provides funding for intensive case management. One of the things that we learned from our experience is that your case management that you provide for folks in the community that are suffering from issues of poverty and mental health related issues and things of that sort that are U.S. citizens, it is not sufficient for our human trafficking victims because they're dealing with such intense other just significant issues, longer term kinds of issues, and it burns out our case management staff so much faster. Because the needs are so much more intensive. You're also faced with the trust issues that I talked about at the very beginning that are significant. And so the training that the case management staff needs is much higher. So there are programs. It's still such a new field that some of the programs are better than others. One of the best programs in the country for our what we call our domestic minor sex trafficking victims, or our teen prostitution is up in New York City. It's called the GEMS program, and it's one of the very best. And we're trying to get that program duplicated in other areas of the country. There's a program similar to that program out in San Francisco. We also have a program for child victims of human trafficking called the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program for those labor trafficking victims that find themselves, stranded in the United States with no parents, no caregivers, or that have been trafficked by their parents here, and they aren't safe with anyone else. And we've used that program with some of our victims as well that have been minors of labor trafficking, and those have been exceptionally good programs. They're providing educational support, they're providing the medical, they're providing that mentorship, they're providing those translation services that they need, and that assimilation and acculturation that is also needed. So there are some, it's just still such an emerging field, but you also see human trafficking programs kind of popping up left and right. Some of them are just because people are trying to help, and you really want to look at the United States Health and Human Services website to see if those programs are legitimate programs or not.
Thank you. I know there were a lot of questions on what can we do to help, so I thought Sherry should go first, and I'm going to ask you to pass it over to Professor Nunn.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from Jeremiah, who asked, last year Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said that businesses can no longer turn a blind eye to human trafficking. What moral and legal obligation do businesses have to make sure their supply lines are free from human trafficking? Also, what of Publix with their continued dismissiveness, I think that is, of the coalition of Immokalee workers? Basically, is there legal and moral obligations? Legal obligations, clearly there are. If you are aware of the fact that you're receiving benefits as a consequence of human trafficking, then under some of the language of the various state and federal statutes, you could be found to be engaged unlawfully in human trafficking just due to the fact that you have sort of a reckless mental state. So basically that could be sufficient for that. But above and beyond that, you could be held to be an aider and abetter of the criminal activities of the others because you turn a blind eye to that. So you need to be aware that, yeah, there is a legal responsibility to make sure that you are not receiving some sort of benefit from human trafficking. The moral question is certainly clear. I'm sure everybody in this room believes that, yes, you have a moral obligation to do so. One thing that I found about corporations, more so than, say, family businesses or companies, but,
corporations, notwithstanding the Supreme Court's decision last year, not persons, and they generally don't have souls, and they generally don't act on the basis of moral principles. And so it's very important for people who do business with corporations, and particularly those of us who are consumers, to make sure that we translate the moral obligation into a business obligation by simply saying we'll take our business somewhere else if you don't do this sort of thing. I mean, that's certainly the reason why we see so many products that are supposedly green on supermarket shelves these days, is because people are voting with their feet and with their pocketbooks. And I think that that's the thing that we need to do in this circumstance. I don't know if that goes any farther. Oh, you have one.
Yeah, good too. Victoria asked the last two questions. I posted it before I terminated. How do we detect Haitian slave labor? How do we prevent it? Boy, that's a in terms of detection, it's very difficult, because in the case that's pending here in Florida, the trafficker warned the people not to talk, not to say anything. They set up barriers between the persons trafficked and the outside world, including the employer. I would say we could, following up on what Dr. Nunn just said, the employers they may know what's going on. They may literally not what's going on. These traffickers, for example, that are now being accused, the employer said, please send him back. This guy is like Moses to the people. Everyone loves him and respects him. The employers, because there was a separation, the employers are getting they're getting a different notion. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, I'll get you. I'll talk fast. All right. So basically, I would. One of the things I would do is to warn the employers that this is going on, and if they have the custom of paying one guy who will then give the money to the others, stop that. You're getting yourself in potential trouble. You pay every laborer directly. That would be one. But the thing is, I don't know what the payment arrangements are among them now. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I can't comment on that directly, but what I can comment on is what we've tried to do here to prevent it, okay. Which is we've gotten very involved with the Department of Health. We've gotten very involved with the Department of Business Regulation, and we've asked them to do regular training and with businesses and the agriculture industry, also to do training with the laborers about what their rights are. We've asked them, in making them a part of this whole process and a part of this case, it's been a very educational process for everyone, and so that they understand what their role is in curbing the activity, because in many of these situations like this, the traffickers will have the victims do a show for the regulators that come out. And so, but the regulators don't know that, and so you have to train them that expect that this is going to be a show. So look for these other things. Go unannounced. Go under these circumstances. Look for these things. And so that they understand how, just how shady and how subtle some of these things can be, and to look for other things, not just what's on the surface here. We really need to be looking below the surface in these situations.
And I would also just say, I'm speaking now as an anthropologist. When you visit a country, sometimes the hardest thing is to get to talk to the people out in the boondocks, because you've got this whole gatekeeping network. Okay. If we could break through and actually interview one-on-one separately with no one else listening, speaking the language of the people, and inviting them, to talk one-on-one with no one else listening, and do that. I mean, this stuff will surface. At least with the Haitians, they will be very blunt and forthright, but not if someone is listening to them. So there would be mechanisms for doing this, I think. For detecting it. And I would be suspicious automatically of any arrangement by which the employer pays this wonderful person who's organized them all. it counts on him to, you know, that right away, that to me is an alarm right then. Okay.
Well, we have a few general questions, and I thought Emmanuel might want to speak to one of these here.
Okay. Yeah, this question is from Ryan. It's for all of us. The question is, how do we increase public awareness about these issues that we've just talked about? I'll say the simple answer to this is to talk about it more, because even within the Haitian community, not a lot of them knows that these kind of things are going on. Because as soon as I heard about the farm workers, the issues of the farm workers in Immaculate and also in Alachua County, I called a few of my Haitian friends, and I told them, I asked them, like, what do you guys know about this? And none of them said it. They said they never heard about that. They didn't even know that these kind of things were going on. So I'll say, like, the simple answer is to just talk about it more. Whether if it's calling the radio station, creating a website where people can see and, you know, read about it. Yeah, I think there's probably like more that we can do, but really the basic thing is all of you guys learn about what's going on, and you can go home and, you know, talk about it with your friends, your coworkers, if you're in school, your classmates, your professors, and etc.
Great. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. You've been a very, very good audience. We have a lot more questions here. I'm passing them as I get them to the people they are addressed to. But I think we've had a range of topics and questions, and feel free as we exit to comment to the panelists or ask your question. Do you want to do the closing? Okay.
I just wanted to thank all of you for being here tonight and for answering some of our questions. And what we can do is we can take the questions that are remaining and put them on the Gainesville IIJ blog spot, so that way we can further try and answer these and get more education out to the communities. Once again, I just wanted to thank all of you for showing up and for listening and for playing the active role of asking questions and really trying to figure this issue out. Stating it's going to take a lot of time to get this out there and to really educate everybody on it. And I want to encourage everybody to take some materials home with you tonight, encourage you to talk more about this with your neighbors, and then also to come to some of the other events that we're holding this week, because we'll have more information. I know that there was a question about the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. We're going to be answering those things. We're going to be talking about them. So please come out and join us at our other events, and thank you for being here tonight.